just wanna get effed up and dance. This is our only chance. Happiness is fleeting. This feeling's way too good to last. Get effed up and dance. No future and no past.
Welcome to Hollywood. I'm your host, Holly Solon, and I would. This is my podcast, and I have a Substack called Hollywood, W-O-U-L-D, where I write about my life in Hollywood. I'm not going to say that word anymore, Hollywood, but today we have celebrity chef Ann Thornton is our guest, and she's so much more than a celebrity chef. She is a writer, a performer, a manifester, and just an all-around star. And I'm so excited because she shared very openly about some of her personal experiences. And I think that's a very unique and special thing. We had some aha moments, so stick around. She tells us about addiction, getting canceled. What's more Hollywood than that? Celebrity chef Ann Thornton. Let's talk about how we met, because it was recently.
It was.
It was not that long ago.
Our friend, both of us have had for a long time.
Yes, Raina.
Raina.
Shout out
The
Raina.
queen. Yeah.
Shout out
Queen Raina.
So we met at a dinner like just a few months ago.
Mhm.
And I had this experience where I was like, oh, if we were 5 years old, we would be best friends. And also 40 or whatever. Like we're meant to be friends.
1,000,000%. Those people you'd like get in trouble with if you had been in class with them.
Yes.
Like the person you would have been separated from. That energy right away. I was like,
separated.
oh, okay.
I thought we were
totally
going to
be
get separated at that dinner.
I'm glad we did it. I'm
feel
really
like
glad we did it.
Nobody else talked.
Oh, yeah.
We were just on a date, just
We're on a
us.
date. Why not? Yeah, with some lovely matchmakers. It was great. It was really fun.
Raina knew though. She was
Yeah.
like, you guys are going to be like besties.
She's a great connector.
She's a really good connector. She's a New York girl,
Mhm.
and you're a New York girl.
Yeah, I was. I'm a transplant. I grew up in the Midwest. I was born in Texas and grew up in Cleveland, but I spent my 20s and early 30s in New York before coming out to LA.
Like your wild
Yeah,
days.
my wild days in New York.
So were you like a crazy chef, like party chef?
I was.
Were
I mean, we opened, I would think I was 25 when the Waverly Inn opened. And I was a pastry chef there. And I also was, we had this email called Fritz, which was like the imaginary, this character that we managed. And everybody had this, because we didn't have a phone number. It was this very exclusive spot. It was owned by it still is there.
Yes,
It's owned by
the
Grady
Waverly
Carter.
was the place to be for fashion and rock stars and
Movie
big
stars
actors
and everybody. It was wild. It was such a
Yeah.
crazy experience. There was no phone number. There's no way to get in. You had to walk in during these certain hours to ask for a reservation. We'd be like, you can have a 6 o'clock or a 10:30.
I used to go there with Raina when I was just a little twerp. Somehow
amazing.
I got in there and was
Well, Raina. Raina's a good connector, especially in the food world.
yeah, and it
for
was
sure.
always like Bono or
Yeah.
someone.
So, it was always like multiple. That was always the fun thing too. Was you'd look over and you're like, oh my gosh, Madonna's having dinner with Justin Timberlake, and like 2 months later, a song would come out between the two of them. Things like that, where you were just like, oh, that's an interesting combo. Like, I wonder what's happening, and just the regular people. It was just a really fun, kind of crazy experience. And Beatrice Inn was down the street.
Yes.
We have that in
I was
Compton
just
as
gonna
well.
say that would be the next stop. Then I'd be at Beatrice until 4 a.m.
Yes.
like
And I would do
swinging
all of that
from the rafters
until I had to get sober. I did it well and long and enjoyed it and had such a fun time, but then had to like call it a day.
Did
when I was
you get
27.
sober when you still lived in New York? or
Oh,
did you
yes.
come to- okay.
Yes, yeah. I had to call it when I was about 27. That whole Saturn return in astrology, the 27 Club with like Jimi Hendrix and
Yeah. You were like, I'm
everybody.
going to die.
Yeah, I think there's a level of that comes to people. I think all of us start to examine our lives. It's when you kind of start to cross into adulthood. Like, are you going to continue in this way? Or are you going to like hit pause and check something else out?
It took me till I was 35 to get sober.
Your Saturn was doing something instead of returning. It was busy, and then it came back.
I basically died at 27 and just stayed flatlined until 35.
It kind of happens. So if you look at it, that 27 is a really weird year. Like,
It
and it's
was.
really weird. And we were joking earlier about blaming astrology for everything now that there's like TikTok and Instagram to keep you totally acutely aware of what's going on with the planets. But like, It's always been important. I have friends that are therapists who study it because there's so much happening that, like, in the planet, they'll be like, "Oh my god, everybody's having this issue." And I recently sent to a friend this note that Carl Jung had sent to Freud, saying how in his later years he's become such a student of astrology and how he can't fully understand a patient without doing their chart. And like,
Oh, wow, that's really
really interesting
interesting.
stuff going on like with that as well. But I think that 27 thing is a big moment.
Well, that actually brings us into something I wanted to talk about, which is
Great.
like you are into all of that, like astrology, manifestation, sound baths, what
Oh yeah.
else? Breath work. Anne has invited me to like a couple sound baths, breath work show. I want to call them a
Totally.
show. I'm like, it's not a
Show.
show. The sound bath show. It's not that.
No. Yeah.
But like, were you always that way, or was this an LA thing? Did you move to LA and then get like sucked in and infected by us sort of weird neo hippie people?
I think I've always had an element of woo woo in me. I've always been a dreamer.
Hmm.
I didn't believe in astrology. I was raised Catholic. That was not acceptable when I was growing up, as considered like witchcraftery kind of stuff
Yeah.
and was shunned. But then I started to identify I'm Irish and I started to research like family's history and world history prior to them being converted into Christianity. And like these Gnostic people were following the moon and the moon cycles and all that stuff. And I was like, this makes sense as we start to look at how modernizing our society has taken us so far away from the earth and in turn destroyed it. It's like interesting to look back at a time when people were being respectful of the earth and what were the beliefs that they had and how were they living and what were their habits and what were their motivations and everything else. So that's where I kind of started to look at it as not being as woo woo as some might think, and also understanding like water and the pull of the moon and gravity and how it affects women and our cycles and all this other stuff.
Right.
And
Our
it's like,
bodies are made of water mostly.
mostly,
Like,
exactly. So of course, we're going to be affected by it in certain ways.
yeah.
So I've just like, I embrace that. But really, coming out to LA has definitely opened me up. I am not going to lie. Also, I got into, after I'd been sober for a number of years, I went through a really dark, horrible depression and I tried a bunch of different stuff and it didn't work. So I got into plant medicine. And that was something that helped me to kind of let go of a lot of my very limited beliefs around what was possible in life. Even though I had been a dreamer and called in big things, I used to have my own show on Food Network. I've had like all these like big things. Waverly was such a huge success, like that I was a part of that. Just being at the center of a lot of things. I always say I have like these major Forrest Gump moments, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm like right there in the middle of something as it's happening, and I'm like,
Because
hi,
you're like a crazy manifester.
crazy, yeah, but not knowing how to tame it and blocking myself in other ways too, unintentionally but subconsciously.
So, have you done ayahuasca?
I've never done ayahuasca.
What
but
are
I did
your
a lot
plant
of
medicines?
cannabis was my gateway into
Mhm.
plant medicine. I always loved to smoke pot for recreational reasons, but once I had been completely sober off of weed and alcohol and any substance, cocaine, any of these things, any kind of pill or anything for like 5.5 years and was in this depression is when I was open to trying that as a medicinal property.
Right.
So that for me, and mushrooms have been an incredible thing. I would love to eventually maybe do ayahuasca. I haven't been called to it in the same way that other people have been, and that might be because I haven't found the right person who I'm supposed to be a
Yeah.
conduit for me. But I also believe that all of these plant medicines are great things to wake us up, but you still have to do the work.
Yes.
It's still a daily
You
thing.
have to
There's
do the
still a
work
day to
in
day thing.
conjunction.
Yes, it's a way. It's like reading something. It highlights these things that we need to look at, but you still have to keep looking at them. You can't just go. I know a lot of people are kind of addicted to the journey, right, of plant medicine, and I see that because we can get addicted to anything. I mean, like you can get addicted to anything, and even though it can look helpful, you can see where people get stuck in this cycle sometimes because they're not actually taking what they're learning and trying to change. Because the real hard work is coming back to reality and showing up differently,
Right.
and
Like
consistently.
spiritual bypass is a big
Thing.
you know,
That I can be
plant
guilty of.
medicine people
Totally.
thing. And also, so like, I have the same experience. I'm now 5.5 years sober, but actually the whole time I have been sober, I've considered myself a sober person. I still have used marijuana medicinally initially because I had a head injury.
That's a
And that
good
was the
reason.
only thing that would make me like not throw up all the time.
Right.
So and I was like sort of figured out that I can trust myself with this particular drug, though not everyone can.
No.
And then like introduced mushrooms a couple of years later back into the fold in a very like controlled and chill way. But I don't like the term California sober.
Nor do I. 'Cause I'm also like, listen, being completely substance free is, and people who do the work of who actually hold the term sober do a lot of like recovery work and all this other stuff. And it kind of feels like a bypass and it feels dismissive of their experience to call it California
Yeah,
sober, right?
exactly.
Like that's a lot. That's really hard to like not smoke any pot, to not
To
do any
have
of these things,
nothing.
to have no release whatsoever.
Raw
substance
dogging
wise.
life.
Yeah, exactly. Who wants to do that? Right?
Very
like, come on.
dangerous.
No, very dangerous. No, but no, it's really admirable. And I think that the California sober thing takes away from that and dismisses what they
Mhm.
have to do on a daily basis. And there are those people. I believe that addiction is a spectrum. And I don't think we talk about this enough in our
Totally.
society.
Everything's a fucking spectrum.
Thank you. Everything's a spectrum. And there's a difference too between addiction and abuse. And there's, and we have to keep space for everybody's experience. And they're all different. And I trust that there's people I know who cannot have a sip of alcohol without them eventually leading to something really dangerous.
Yeah,
right?
I've dated a lot of those guys.
It's a thing. It's a real thing. Yes. And never again,
Never again, honey, never
No,
again.
but that's like a real thing. And I think that that's okay, like to admit that there's different things and different solutions for different people. But I think I like to just be like, I'm not somebody who depends on substances for any kind of
Yeah.
escape or
You
whatever.
can have fun without it. And then there's
Always, yeah.
caffeine, like a couple of cokehead girls just love to get like tiggery.
1,000,000%. I think that there's a lot of like, I love caffeine. I actually have to keep myself. I'm like totally abusing my own boundaries right
I
now.
abuse
Some-
caffeine.
Yeah.
That's the one I abuse.
It's a hard one not to, especially when you've shot your adrenals in your 20s doing lots of fun uppers, but there's a ceremony around coffee that's enjoyable and it's delicious. And it is a good thing for mood for sure, but I have to limit it or I won't sleep and then that affects my mood. too.
Same. I'm not allowed after like 1 p.m. Like, no.
Isn't that
Sometimes
so
I go
funny
a
to
little
think?
for little.
But like now you're limited to 1
No,
p.m.
like 2 p.m. It's
I know,
fine.
right? I know, it's so funny. I'm the same way. I'm like, okay, anything after like 11:30, I like can't have caffeine. I'm like, maybe an iced coffee or an iced tea at lunch, maybe an iced tea. But like,
Yeah.
I was always this like wild person up until like the next day. But I enjoy this quieter life. Are you enjoying it?
Oh, life is amazing. It's so much
Right?
better. I don't need anything. I don't need any substances. I have like a freezer full of shrooms and weed, and I have so many drugs in my house that I just don't ever do. I'm changed, but it's because I've done the hard work. I've done like tons of EMDR and trauma
Huge.
therapy, and that's the thing that changed me.
I-
And the steps. I've done all the things, and I continue to do all the things.
And that's the most important thing is that it's like everything. We always have to work hard. We want to have the kind of lives that you want. You want to work hard for it, right?
Yeah.
It feels
it's
good.
like priorities. You're like, what is more important? Like getting wasted on a Tuesday or getting up and like doing a podcast?
Well, I think it's one of the things we were talking about with like manifesting all this stuff too. It's like your worth, your self-worth. When you show up as the person you want to be, even when you don't feel that in that day, when it's not about feelings, when it's just like something you do no matter what, when you make a commitment to yourself to show up as that person, your life changes drastically. And you don't have to wait to like quit these things for a long time. Like you can start feeling differently today and behaving differently today. That's how real change happens. Even like neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Plasticity wise, you have to keep doing these things. And it's hard. It's like, I remember my therapist explaining to me, like making these new choices. The first time it's like being in a forest and nobody's cut a path, right? So you have to get out this machete and you're like, like going at it, right? And then it takes forever to get through that path and it's really painful. And then the next time you go down that, you use the machete again, it's a little bit more clear. And then eventually you keep making that decision. It becomes a super highway.
That's a really good metaphor.
Isn't that good? It's helpful. It's
I've
a
never
really
heard
helpful
that.
one, right? But that's how I see it in my brain.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody.
A new neural pathway, way of visualizing, creating new neural pathways. But
You
yeah,
heard
we
it
need
here
these,
first.
right? But they're helpful. These visualizations of like, oh, this is hard. And I think about that when I'm trying to do something new. I'm like, this is hard because I've not cut this path, but soon this is going to be a super highway. So I'm going to keep
Yeah.
going until it's like paved and like very aerodynamic.
So cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I could talk about this all day. I also want to quickly mention, like, I Googled you, of course.
Yeah,
And I
that always makes me nervous when people say that. I'm always like, oh, Lord. Okay.
No, don't worry. I just saw that you're
Amazing.
a Gemini, and I want to talk about
am.
Scorpio and Gemini friendship.
Are you a Scorpio?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I love Scorpios. I cannot date you people
I
anymore.
was just gonna say I cannot date a Gemini.
We're never gonna be a
ever.
couple,
But
unfortunately.
I have
But
so many good Gemini girlfriends.
agreed with the Scorpios.
Gemini men are kind of weird.
Agreed with
Sorry.
the Scorpios. That's how I feel about the Scorpios. I get to feel you. I love the women. It's also how I am with Virgo women.
Yeah.
Virgo women and I are like, I do so well. Virgo men and I are like, no.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's like wild. Like I'm always like, this is so weird. Like this is real, these things. But
Yeah,
I'm like
it
a
is.
very true Gemini. In fact, my twins have twins. Like I have like, there are so many like of us. So it's like a big like multiple birth when I was born for sure. Yeah.
That's so weird. I just saw this psychic recently who told me that I have like that I'm like twins. I'm all kinds of twins, and I have two brains, and I have two sets of eyes, and it's just weird, too weird to even get into on this show. But
Interesting. I do act at lunch. I want to explore this though. Like
I
that's
was
something I
like,
definitely
that
want to hear
sounds
more
very
about.
Gemini. I
Yeah,
don't
very
know.
Gemini energy. Yeah, I'm
So-
a true blue one.
Why did you decide to come to Los Angeles?
I was I'd gone through a lot in New York. I'd had this like open these cool restaurants, had this show on Food Network. I came out to LA because I was writing a scripted concept based on my experience at Waverly as like a young female chef with a friend of mine. And I wanted to put my hat in the ring out here. And then during that time, I had this crazy thing happen where I ended up on the cover of the New York Post being accused of plagiarizing my recipes, even though Food Network denied it and I denied
Okay,
it.
I really am excited to get into this. Anne got canceled
Before it existed.
which is like the most Hollywood thing ever. And
you.
she's like one of the first people to get canceled right here on our show.
OG cancel culture right
I'm
here.
so excited.
I know, and I didn't murder or rape anybody. So it's even cooler. I'm
There
accused.
was no sex offense.
No sex offense.
nothing.
No drugs were even involved.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there was nothing. There was no like,
Just
yeah,
lemon
squares.
bars.
Yeah,
Oh, lemon
lemon bear
squares.
bars. It's the same thing.
Okay, but like,
Maybe if I called him by a different name, I wouldn't have been accused of it.
isn't there only like one way to make lemon bar squares?
Yeah, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah, yeah, basically. So
Okay,
we
so what
still don't-
happened?
we don't
So-
know.
So you were on a Food Network show during this time?
my show had actually been canceled in July, and this article came out the following February. So it was really weird because they had done my show got canceled the same day as like 5 other shows. They were moving away from this what they call in the industry dump and stir, which is you standing there doing it. It's an in the kitchen cooking show. You're just like and
Dump
then
and
next and then yeah,
stir.
you're like like kind of a exactly. It sounds terrible.
It
People always
sounds
shocked when I say it,
terrible.
but it's funny because it's like you're just literally standing there being like, and they were now competition shows are what is cool, and that was where the trend was.
Okay.
This is 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago. This is a long time ago.
Dang.
So, yeah. And, so it thought nothing of it. Like, it was just like, I was so excited to have had this show. It popped out of nowhere. It happened so quickly. I got this crazy deal really quickly, like matter of months. And the show was on the air. It was wild. And my first ever live cooking demo was on the Today Show. It was really one of those
wow.
things where I'd been
That's
around all these people,
a
all these really
manifestation.
famous people, and I'd been in everybody's houses cooking, and I'd done all these cool restaurants. You were in the same circles, so you know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. And it was interesting because you're always around these people, and then all of a sudden you're the one getting interviewed too. I mean, they're still getting interviewed, but you're in like the smaller publication getting interviewed.
You're getting interviewed.
Right. One of my friends
Right
was like,
now.
we were just talking about this. You do better interviews than we do. And I was like, well, thank you. I've
But
been watching
you
for years.
Are
you
a
know?
star. You're
Yeah.
a magnet.
Well,
so it's like,
thank
of
you,
course,
likewise.
you're gonna get a show.
But it happened really quickly. It was really cool, but also went away as quickly. And it was one of those experiences where I couldn't defend myself in a way that I wanted to. And I still don't know who was behind it or why. Thank God they used a great picture, because when you Google me, it does come up, and it's a great picture.
is.
It's a great picture.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to be, and the entire cover, I mean, like, I always wanted to be a cover girl.
Yeah.
Wasn't how I foresaw it, but
Wait, so
I was also glad it wasn't a
walk
worse
me
scandal.
through that morning of
That
what
morning?
happened, because you had no idea this was coming. You had no idea you were going to get canceled over lemon bars. Like, what happened in the morning?
I woke up to a phone call actually from a producer on the Today Show who was calling me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was in Los Angeles, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning in New York. And she said, we'd love for you to, my grandmother was dying at the time. Otherwise I wouldn't have like answered a random call, but I didn't know, when it's like one of those things. So
Yeah.
I grab it and I'm like, hello. And she tells me, she's like, I'm sure everybody is reaching out because you're the cover of the New York Post. And I had a phone call from a reporter the day before asking me some questions. And I called Food Network. I just gotten out of my contract with them a few months earlier because my contract was with them as opposed to with the show. I got to help choose the production company I worked with, whatever. But
Mhm.
I was hoping the production company I'd worked with before on my show, because I loved them, we had such a great time doing it, we were going to hopefully sell one of these types of shows that they're not doing anymore to another network, right?
Another dump and
Yeah,
stir.
another dump and stir before they're all gone. Now they're on Instagram and TikTok and are killing it like in 5 seconds. And I'm like, I totally get the efficiency of this. I love it. But yeah, so we were gonna do that. And then but it was like a whole weird, it was just so weird. And I called them back, and then I called the reporter back because I didn't think I had anything, I didn't think this was real, like what was going on, this whole thing that they said they had, that I had that I had been fired from my job at Food Network because of my recipes. And I was like, "Oh, this is so strange," like, whatever. So I called them back and I was like, "Hey, like, what's going on?" Because I thought it was like a page 6 line item. I had no idea how it
Yeah.
was gonna end up. So they actually have my rebuttals in the paper, which is kind of funny. But when I heard from the Today Show, I was just like, "Hold on, I'm the cover." I thought I had rebuted their thing so well that they weren't even gonna run it in page 6, but instead it became
It's
this
the
whole
fucking
page
cover.
of the thing. And it was just a whole crazy, oh, I keep bumping my microphone, excuse me, I'm sorry. Not meaning to do that. I just talk with my hands. It's one of my things. I know, like, and you gave me coffee, so you're lucky I'm actually sitting and I don't have a seatbelt on. So yeah,
Did we get a seatbelt?
Oh yeah, no, the exact accusation was that I had plagiarized my recipes, that my recipes were not original. You can't copyright recipes, and like baking stuff is different. Could they have been more unique? 1,000,000%. But like once you get off of that, like you're no longer making lemon squares. So it was like this weird thing. And I heard from everybody in the industry, they were like, not everybody, but a lot of people. And people are like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? Even Al Roker said on the Today Show, he's like, does this mean that people are going to like copyright grilled cheeses now? This is ridiculous. I was like, thank you, Al. I love you
Wait,
forever,
so
Al.
you think this, like, I mean, because where would this have come from?
I still
Somebody
don't
was
know.
trying to like take
Somebody was
you
trying to do
down.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to everybody, and everybody had theories on it, which made it really weird and made me really depressed.
What are some of the theories?
That's an area.
Are you allowed to say?
No, just because I like, honestly, it's one of the things where I don't want to think the worst of different people. I've definitely explored it in therapy and EMDR. The reality is, as hard as it was, as horrible as it was, as humiliating as it was, one of the biggest fears I've ever had in my life was that people were going to find me out and think I was a fraud. One of the parts of having a big
just got
dynamic,
chills.
right? Big dynamic personality, part of being somebody who has addiction tendencies, somebody who's lied a lot to cover that shit up, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot that could have been said, other than I was a little bit relieved it was the recipes that were the issue, that were the thing,
Wow.
to be honest with
Yeah.
you. So for me, it actually brought my biggest fear to the forefront. And I think sometimes when we have to face our biggest fears, we are empowered in ways that we've never been before,
Yes.
because we look at them in the eye and we're like, oh, you're going to hurt me really bad and this is going to be really painful, but I'm going to survive this. And not only am I going to survive, I'm going to take these pieces of my life that I want, that I choose this time, and rebuild.
Yeah.
And I think that was, for me, gave me, as hard and painful as it was, it allowed me to eventually break through so many things that were holding me back, that I didn't even know, that were limiting my beliefs
It
around
gives
myself.
you a lot of freedom.
A lot of freedom.
When your greatest fears come true. It's happened to me a couple times,
Yep.
like where I've lost everything.
Yeah.
And, I had to
Yeah.
completely rebuild.
I was thinking about the pandemic. My friends are like, "You're so calm." I'm like, "I've lost everything many a time
Exactly,
before.
like,
I'm
I've had
skilled at this, baby."
Everything taken
Uh-huh.
away, or my greatest fear of like somebody's gonna change their mind about me and stop loving me. It's all happened. It's
course.
all fucking happened, and now it's very freeing.
It's
'Cause
incredibly
you're kind of
freeing.
like, you can do whatever you want to me. I'll survive.
As long as you don't believe the story about yourself.
Yeah.
That's the issue. One of the big things about EMDR, and I know we share this love,
Yes.
is the reprogramming. It's one of the big things about being being conscious of your thoughts, is the reprogramming, is not engaging those thoughts that continue that narrative that you have about yourself. Like, I'm not a fraud. Like,
Yeah.
could my recipes have been more original? For sure. Yeah. Was I doing a show for the masses? For sure. Was I cooking like a chef? No, that was not the goal of the show. So it's like these types of things where you're like, okay, cool. But nothing happens in a vacuum. So you have to look
Yeah.
at, what is it trying to teach you?
So this sort of like broke you out of this maybe sort of like a cookie cutter image that you were trying to portray for the show or for the world or whatever, and you are now free to be more authentic because of it, right? Like,
Yeah, I think what it woke up in me that's kind of cool is it woke up, I'd always been a performer. my
Mhm.
whole life. I had been in plays. I went to a Montessori school where we all had to do plays because it really helps with public speaking and self-esteem and all this other stuff. But I loved being in the plays and I was obsessed. And my mom is not a person who loves Hollywood by any stretch of the imagination. She loves books and like intellectual conversations and will watch like British television mysteries, and that's about it. And so wanting to be an actor, wanting to do these things, which is what I wanted when I was a child, those dreams were not supported by either one of my parents. My
They were
sister and
like
I,
squashed deep down inside of you.
yeah, totally. And like also my personality, I have a big personality. And when you're a kid and you're learning to navigate that, you get a lot of feedback that you're annoying from your parents. You get a lot of
Yes.
feedback that you should
Yes.
shut up, that you should, especially if you're a girl.
Please
Like,
calm down and go in the corner and be quiet.
I love you,
And
but
I'm
I don't
"Look
like
at
you
me,
right
look at
now.
me."
All of that stuff. Yeah. So I got a lot of that. And and I'm the youngest. And so there's also that need. And there was a
Mm,
lot of like trauma in my childhood and all this other stuff. And like, I was like, this is part of my shadow, was pushing away the performer, even though it would always come out, like at work and restaurants.
right.
That was why Food Network, they told me I had won the New York Wine and Food Festival event, like this sweet event thing that they like, whatever. And then I got a phone call from them to meet with them. And then they were like, "Do you want to do a screen test?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I'd never done a screen test in my life. And they're like, "You won't hear from us for like 3 months." And I heard from them like the next day. And then it went because there's a thing in me that like will always come out, the performer in me, the person, like
Yeah.
it really is there, it lives there. And some of us have it and some of us don't. And those of us who have it, no matter how it's expressed, needs to be expressed. It needs to come out of us. And I feel like it woke that up in me and allowed me to be like, no, I actually am a performer, or these people wouldn't have invested all this money in creating a show where I was just standing there talking, doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been asked to do all this other stuff. And I wouldn't have been asked
And
to,
it wouldn't have happened so quickly and weird. Like, yeah, it
yeah,
sort of woke that up.
it allowed me to embrace that part of my shadow more than it, and then it scared me. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not allowed to go out in public. This is why.
Right. I'm
This is
going to
what
get
happened.
canceled. I'm going to get in trouble for being
Yeah.
my bright, shiny self. Someone's going to try to take me down. It's
Yeah.
a test. Right when I came out of my mother's womb,
Yeah.
I
You were
was
ready?
like, I'm a star. Seriously.
No, I believe you.
I
I'm not,
mean,
you can see me dismissing you.
Okay, so my mom tells the story about how she took me to my first day of like preschool. I think I was like 2 or 3, and I had prepared a dance for the class. So the whole class sat around
I love
like
it.
all these little 3-year-olds, and I went and like did this whole like dance for everybody. And actually,
it.
I think about that all the time in these like we both do this Lacey Phillips manifestation.
Yes, the to be magnetic work. Yes.
To be magnetic. And I think about that's like my authentic self is like this little girl who's like, let me show you my dances.
Right. And I love it when I love that. And I can totally see you as that little girl. Like I really can. Like, and I love that those little girls are out there. And I think in our generation, I remember being called bossy all the time. And I'm like, I'm not bossy. Like, I'm a boss. Like, I really am somebody who should be running this. I should be organizing a group of people to do this dance. I should be directing this play, obviously. Like, like, come on. Like, I wasn't bossy. I was just had better ideas,
we're
right?
Best friends when we're 5 years old.
Exactly, right? I know. I used to make my neighbors sit and watch performances. I'd create these plays. It's so, I cringe sometimes when I think about it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's who, exactly, when I go into that inner space, like, who is this? Who am I really? And it's that person, and to embrace that person fully, and to right now what I'm trying to do, and I think we're in similar parallel paths, is like reparent that child.
Yes, I'm doing so much reparenting right now, and like have fully different parents. Like I have like this dad with a beard, and I'm sorry, Dad, I love you, like you're amazing, but it's just a more typical traditional dad. And then
Right.
I have like a mom who's like very full and joyful and
Right,
loving,
I get it.
and,
Yeah.
and sometimes she's Susan Sarandon.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love Susan Sarandon. I could totally see her as your mom too. I feel like if you ever, if she's your daughter in a movie, you'd be really good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I can totally see that. Me? Yes, she used to come into.
Oh, you have?
Lately. Yes, she's very lovely. Yeah,
Well,
she's very lovely.
She's my mom.
Yeah, she can definitely be. I think, and I think her daughter is really lovely too, as well. Like she does a bunch of like stuff. Like it's.
Yeah,
Listen,
she seems like she has her shit together, the daughter. So I'm like, that's
a good mom. A good mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like these women like Susan Sarandon, who are people who are incredible. You think about what a pioneer she was. I think it's so important as women to always put into context women the generation ahead of us and their experience. Like I know that in kitchens how rough it is as a woman when such a small percentage of, I know in the music industry how rough it is as a woman. I know in Hollywood in general, in TV and how rough it is. Like these women had it like a million times worse than any of us.
Yeah.
Not that, you know, in general, because it was
Yeah.
so prevalent. There was no self-awareness for most of these men, you know, at that time. And I think about what they've had to survive to be where they are. And I'm just like,
I mean, think about the difference from when we started out even 11 years ago to where things are today, like within the industry and with the relationships with men in power. It's changed immensely in the
yeah.
last 11 years. We're not there yet, but
No, we're not definitely there. But I think about that even
there's a
in
lot of exposure of sort of what things are.
totally. I think that even in context of like my being canceled, that there are actual police investigations into food people at that time for like felonies,
Yeah.
crimes against women, sexual crimes, abuse things, like, and that I'm like, they're like, her lemon squares are too similar to Ina Garten's. You know what I mean? Like,
Fucking crazy.
it's
I
kind of
can't even
wild
believe
to
that,
think.
Anne.
You know what I mean? It's really no, but it's really wild.
So what happened after the cancellation? Like, where did you go from there?
I was out here when it happened, and then I decided to go back to where I grew up in Cleveland, and I was there for about a year. I decided I didn't want any part of like anything like Hollywood,
Oh
New
my
York,
gosh.
big time. And I worked with a nonprofit during that time, raising money to transform this former McDonald's into a state of the art food production facility for people with mental and physical challenges. And they'd been around forever in Cleveland. They ran a grocery store that people worked at and did like vocational rehabilitation training. So yeah, and I worked with them and it was really cool and helped design their curriculum and all this other stuff
Wow.
and really disconnected, and then got a phone call because the performer will always come out from the amazing Corin Nelson, who's the executive producer. I met her when she was the executive producer of the Nate Burka show, and I was on there a lot. And she and I got friendly. And then she was the executive producer of the Queen Latifah show out here. And she was like, I need you to come out and fill this. You know, we've got this episode with Jake Gyllenhaal and Lisa Kudrow. And I
This
want you
is
to come
crazy.
on.
I love
So
this story.
yeah, so I flew out here to LA and I did taped that episode of for the first week of Queen Latifah, and it was one of those really cool moments where you walk on set, and I was like, okay, Queen Latifah, who I'm admired since you like Yo MTV Raps, right?
Yeah,
And then like
the queen.
the Queen, exactly. And then you've got like Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith were the ones part of the producing team. Lenny Kravitz designed the set. It was incredible.
Lenny Kravitz designs sets?
Oh yeah, Lenny Kravitz has his own design company, like interior design company. Yeah, and hotels and all kinds of stuff.
I didn't know that.
He is a Renaissance man.
Ugh,
And I think he's like a
cute.
raw vegan as well. So he has a lot of cool things going on.
He hit on my mom once.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
He tried to get her to
amazing.
come on the tour bus, and I was like, Mom!
You're like, Mom, did you go? You should have
No,
gone.
I was with her. I was with her. I watched
you're
it
with her.
happen.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was like 15 and I was mad he wasn't hitting on me.
I understand, but I'm proud of Lenny Kravitz that he wasn't. You know, like in this day and age,
you're
let's
right.
look at this the
I've
right
never
way.
even thought about
Let's
that
reframe
before.
this. He likes MILFs. Go for you.
Lenny.
Go, Lenny, go. I'm all in support of the men
I'm
who
40
pursue.
now, Lenny.
Right. Men pursue MILFs, not teenagers. Please. You heard it here first,
Heard
right?
it here first.
Hot moms are a way better option.
Sorry,
Yeah,
go on.
that's amazing.
Go on.
No, but it was just like one of those like very Hollywood moments. You're filming down at the Sony set and I was walking back on. I'm like, oh, it's not all lost. Like I can do this. And then I went, one of my friends had this house and she was renting it and I went and I rented it that week that I was here, like the
So you
days
were
and
just
I
like,
moved
"I'm
right
back."
away. Yeah. I was
You
like,
were
I'm
ready.
going back. And then I had all these opportunities. A college friend who just retired from the NFL was opening a restaurant in San Diego. And we partnered in that and went down there and did a vegan raw food space. It was super cool and high energy. Cause I decided that anything I did moving forward, something was fraudulent in what I was doing with Food Network. Whether or not it was what they accused me of, there's something there energetically. I believe in all this with energetics.
Yeah.
So I was like, I knew better. I'd been doing raw food and healthy food for a long time for celebrity clients before I became part of the Waverly and stuff. That was what I did out of culinary schools as a private chef to all these different people. Every field you can imagine, from movie stars, rock stars. No. No. I just,
that's fine.
You
That's
can
fine.
figure it. Yeah, you can figure it out. Like if you can, like you can look at. I don't know. There's some things you can probably figure out, but like no, just like out of respect and everything, I'm really like careful about that kind of stuff. But it was a really interesting experience. I knew about wellness and food and how to get people to the right place. So that's actually part of why when then Moby asked me to partner with him to do a space out here, a vegan restaurant, because I had done this other stuff in the past. But I had when I did the Food Network show, because of Waverly had been more of like an unhealthy food, it wasn't aligned. I had started to gain weight during that time period. I've always struggled with food issues. I know I'm a chef, and that makes it even more complicated,
Wow.
because it's really
Yeah.
hard when it's what you do. And that's part of, there's a lot of controlled eating things and diets and plans. And when you know how to do all that stuff, starving myself, doing like master cleanses with clients for 21 days so they could get ready for something. But in the meantime, like you're basically just like really dysfunctional, weird stuff that I didn't think was. I thought it was healthy at the time, right?
Yeah, right.
All of
Mass.
us.
It's a spiritual bypass again.
Agreed 1,000,000%. But I knew all this stuff, and then I'm doing this Food Network show that's all dessert based, which wasn't what I wanted to do originally. I had named it dessert first because it was supposed to be like how a wine connoisseur will choose the wine, then build the dinner around it. I wanted to choose the dessert and build it around it because I'd gotten known as a pastry chef, even though I'm not a trained pastry chef. I'm a classically trained chef. So it was like all these people come up to me. I do these big speaking things where that's where you make most of your money, is like doing these like things when you're on like Food Network. And people come up to me and they'd be like, I eat your salted caramel banana pudding pie like every week. And I'm like, oh my God, you're not supposed to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to eat that for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Like, I'm like, I'm morally culpable. Like, and it felt, and there are people, and I'm never going to body shame anybody, and people can carry extra weight and be way healthier than thin people. And there's a whole thing that's wrong in our society about that. But these were people who are unhealthy, who were in rascals because they could not walk on their own. These were people who were carrying too much weight, and it wasn't because they were, and
Wow.
I felt like I'm encouraging this. I know
Wow.
that this is dangerous. I know this is an area I struggle in. This is an area that I have such a pain body around, literally and figuratively. And I gained weight between my first and second seasons. And people took notice and were writing it in comments, and on the website, not on social media. This is before social media, and people were mean then too. People are like, "Oh, social media." I'm like, "All right, like you should go out and try yourself being like in the arena."
Yeah,
as Brene Brown calls it. Try being in the arena before social media. It was not fun either. Like, but had a woman, an actual journalist in Medium, write an article which is discussing best TV shows, cooking shows. My show was the one that motivated them to go make something. And she said to her son in the thing, and she put this in the article, it was always so shocking to me. She looks like she eats a lot of desserts. And my son said, "That isn't nice, Mom." And I'm like,
she put that
on Medium, an actual journalist, which was like, because it was also interesting to me to see how many women, even the article in the New York Post is written by women, like too, with women on women and all this kind of stuff of like the body shaming and weird stuff around food and all of this stuff. And like, I'm sure she didn't, I don't know why she needed to include that at all. And it was so funny. My producers in my show were like, "This is great. She thinks you have the best show." It motivated her. I was like, "She called me fat." Like, did you guys, it's interesting how we see things too, based on our own filter as well.
Makes me feel sick.
But it's this thing of being a woman and putting yourself out there. And men don't, they don't have to be cute.
Yeah.
They don't have to be fit.
Not
they don't
even
have to be
cute.
cute. Like,
No.
I'm not looked at,
Be like ogres.
Yeah, I'm real successful.
I
And
mean,
you're
look
like,
at the fame of Shrek.
for real. And he's a nice one. He's a good ogre. He's like a kind one, right? I was like, okay, good.
Let's talk about today. Let's talk about the current life of Ann Thornton. What's happening with you?
There's a lot happening. I have I think it's really cool. I partner with this really amazing company called Cook Unity, and my food is available for delivery to your home through them. My food is delivered across basically the western seaboard and inwards, like Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Nevada, all of California, and it gets delivered to your door, and you can get some meals from me and from other chefs like that are on the platform, which is really cool. And it's been wonderful. I do plant-based on there, so we have a really small carbon footprint. And the nice thing about the company is all of our packaging is sustainable, and it's really affordable. And I don't know, if you want to use my name, you can get 50% off your first order.
You heard it here.
Chef Ann Thornton. But yeah, no, I do that. And then I work with sustainable brands and do consulting and different work with that. And I'm working on 2 writing projects right now, which is very fun and exciting. And recently, as you know, and I will share, because this is such a minor thing, like in like the grand scheme, but it was a big deal for me. In order to reparent myself and heal the broken inner child and broken performer, I last week auditioned to start doing the Groundlings program in West Hollywood. This is amazing comedic history, the school with like people like Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, like the greats,
The
and like
greats.
Paul Rubens, he developed Pee Wee Herman there, and like all these,
Wow.
there's so many amazing people in the legacy. But I'm gonna start doing the professional track, or what is it called, the core track, yeah. So I'm really excited to explore this side of myself, like whatever that means. It's just about getting back to embracing and playing and exploring. And you're a performer, and you know that like we have to have that need met, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of like, I've never pursued the TV thing on my own, which is a weird thing. Like I've come up with ideas, but I never like go out and pitch stuff and whatever. But I'm like, I need to feed myself this. This is something I've been really hungry for. So that's what I'm
You're
doing
a writer, you're a creator, you're a performer, you do all the things. You're a super manifester, superstar. I'm so excited that you came on the show. When I met you, I don't even think this podcast existed a few months ago, but then once we came up for the idea with this, you were one of the first people that came to mind. I was like, I have to interview Anne. She's so fun. She's such a star. You're so multifaceted. And I'm just so excited for you and for everything that's coming up, the Groundlings and everything.
Thank you so much for having me on this. And this is such a cool thing for me to experience, you doing this, like you stepping into this. This didn't exist a couple of months ago. And the Substack that you're doing is so incredible. And the work, no, for real.
Thank
this is
you.
all like, this is big stuff, but this is the same kind of alignment of like stepping into things, stepping into the unknown, allowing yourself to not be pigeonholed into just songwriting and just into music. Like you're so much more than that. And those are wonderful things, but you're more than that. And you don't have to just do those things.
It's stupid. So
I'm sure in some ways it is. And I'm sure that it also loves you in ways, and it'll probably come back into your life in ways that you could never imagine too. Because, there's all, you're like, I'm playing hard to get. I'm like, it's going to have to work real hard to win me back.
Real hard.
Real hard.
There's gonna have to be a big old paycheck attached.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I love those.
I know. I love you, Anne.
I love you too. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I just wanna get effed up and dance. This is our only chance. Happiness is fleeting.